Hey friends, today's video is a slide presentation of the rise of XimCronus cheating. I know Aztecross did a similar video, but that's what spurred me to finish this project. I've been toying around with it for a while and finally thought of the right way to convey some of my thoughts, and I use the slide form to stay on topic and keep the comment section dialed in so that they don't write useless comments and I can make a better video in the future. Popular cheating methods in order of impactfulness. So goes from red to green, where green is mostly accepted by the gaming community, and red is very obviously cheating, and most anti-cheat would pick it up in a heartbeat and ban you. At least sometimes. They do ban waves. Not getting into that right now. Code injection. Changing the game's executable code in real time. Artificial intelligence. AI assisting the player with enhanced information or performing perfect inputs. Xim. That's a converter that recognizes mouse and keyboard on console while retaining all advantages of aim assist. Keep in mind that if you are the best mouse and keyboard player in the world, Xim is actually a downgrade, unless of course you're running scripts. But in the case of aim assist on mouse and keyboard, if you're using a projectile weapon and you're really good at aiming, and someone runs across your screen right in front of your target, you're not going to be able to correct your aim because the aim assist will drag your crosshair away from where you intentionally want to aim. There's also the case of games like Destiny 2, where certain weapons in the game favor controller and certain weapons favor mouse and keyboard. If you use Xim, you don't get to take advantage of the good M&K weapons, but you do get to uniquely take advantage of the controller weapons with more precision, especially if you run scripts. I'll define what that means in a future slide. Cronus enables scripts and has advanced settings on controller. It's a USB device. Brook is also a USB device. This is a converter that sole purpose is to recognize Xbox controllers on PlayStation and vice versa. These are very helpful in the fighting game community, but some newer models do have turbos and macros and scripts, but essentially it also has a tournament mode so that the tournament organizer can okay it and you're allowed to compete. Over the years, controllers have had many hardware advancements. Take your standard Xbox controller, then we get the Xbox Elite controller with paddles and custom software. Then we have the modular Thrustmaster. Now we have Hall effect sticks, etc., gyro aiming, all the above. Controllers are so advanced. So advanced that the community sometimes has to come together to decide what is allowed in competitive play and what isn't. Sometimes developers update their anti-cheat, and it all happens through community discourse like I'm doing right now. So for example, in the fighting game community, we have our standard lever, our standard fight stick, and then we have our leverless controller, like this hitbox. And the advantage of the hitbox is, although it's a short amount of time, it does take time, for example, to go from left to right with the stick. Whereas with the hitbox, you're using 4 fingers, it's instant. It's like 1 millisecond. And in some cases, you can use opposite directions to instantly perform an input. And so to combat this, they require that you have something called SOCD cleaning software, which prevents simultaneous opposite cardinal directions from being inputted at the same time. So if you're not following those rules, the hitbox is not legal. So here we go. Standard controller legal, hitbox legal, but it has to follow the rules. And then we have this pizza box with all these buttons on it. It's somehow still legal because it has the SOCD and it follows the rules to a T, and you have to respect it. Even though they could be argued to get an advantage by just sliding their hand across to perform a combination input in the game, you still gotta respect that they followed the rules. Now we have this dinky Nintendo 64 controller with a turbo function, and that's banned because it's using a turbo function which automates inputs. Even in real life, in marathon running, hardware caught a ban. Take, for example, the marathon world record holder. These shoes were slightly too efficient, so they got banned. Let's go over some aim assist definitions that'll really put everything I just talked about together. Tension, when the control stick is barely moved, so the input registers. Friction, when the reticle slows down when you're near the target. Adhesion, when either stick, the left stick or the right stick, is tensioned, the reticle will now automatically track a moving target. Auto aim or bullet deflection. That's when your reticle is off target, but the bullets bend to correct. And I am oversimplifying all of this, by the way. Hitbox and hurtbox, the size of the target or the size of the bullet. Keep in mind, mouse and keyboard typically does not receive adhesion or friction. Though in Halo Infinite, for example, they're experimenting with giving M&K players the option to feel that. to feel the power. What is a script? A script is a line of code that tells the input device to automate certain inputs. Turbo. If a button is held down, it repeatedly presses it fast. This could be full auto fire, bunny hopping, whatever. Macro. A list of commands always done to exact timing, activated by a single button press. In Destiny 2's case, this could be, again, Titan skating, this could be well skating, shatter skating, all the above. Imagine in a PvP setting now, bow string canceling, where you're able to get the perfect draw every time by just tapping reload when you've already full drawn. Another could be bypassing Fighting Lion's melee lockout timer. You can get really creative with macros, and I don't want to spend the entire video on that, but just know you can argue that it gives you an advantage. The real ones where there's not really much of an argument is anti-recoil. If the right trigger is detected as held, then the right thumbstick is moved just down enough to compensate for the recoil, depending on what weapon is used. Extra aim assist. This is technical jargon. All it really does is just minimally tension the stick repeatedly so that it registers friction and adhesion. So that's what these companies call more aim assist. It's technically correct, but all it does is just jitter the stick back and forth. And it's funny, some gamers in the comment section of these like Zim and Zen videos, they're like complaining, dude, it moves my stick all over the place. I don't know what setting I misplaced. It's hilarious to me that so many of these Cronus and Zim users like suck at using their own devices. Like I almost want to optimize it for them, then rematch them, just because it's so sad. Then we have auto crouch. If the right trigger is held, then the crouch button is also spammed in conjunction with it. And game to game, this is going to give you an advantage, but in Destiny 2, it's really not. You can argue it is. In some very specific cases it is, but it's really stupid. What just grinds people's gears is that they're not doing it manually. Software is doing it for them. All this being said, though, Zim and Cronus does not automatically make you effective. You can't take a bad player and turn them into a god just for using these devices with optimized scripts. It's just not possible. Zim utilizes mouse and keyboard on console to be more precise in addition to running scripts. Cronus runs scripts that automate gameplay aspects. At the end of the day, they still have to aim at other players. They just have less input combinations to get in the way of just aiming. Mouse and keyboard precision with friction and adhesion. Perfect controller customization. This is a big one. You can modify dead zones, have custom response curves, remap buttons to anything on a controller or a mouse and keyboard, etc. What they do not have is aimbot injection and wall hacks or that type of thing. So I really want to drive this home. It doesn't make you like automatically as effective as code injection and AI. It's not the same thing. However, cheating is not just for bad players. Let's listen to a quote from Carl Joss, another content creator. In my experience, when it comes to luck-based games, players don't cheat to get a faster time, they cheat to get a time faster. Even outside of speedrunning, in FPS games, this concept holds true. High-skill players still feel inclined to cheat for one reason or another. Some that come to mind for me are justice cheating, making other cheaters lose because they deserve the loss. So if they cheat and you cheat, you're making a cheater lose and proving to them that they suck. So that's why you feel inclined to do it. Then we have the monetary incentive. You make money off selling leaderboard positions, boosting, recubs, winning tournament money. Here's a very specific one that a lot of y'all probably wouldn't use, but it's using cheats to learn more about the game than to not use them and play legit in a tournament. So an example of this would be like if you could walk through walls, have a developer config, that type of thing in game that shows exact grenade distances, trajectories, all those, and then reverse engineering it to use it legitimately to beat other players. You could argue that's cheating, right? Then there's the most obvious one, which is discourse community inclusion. Using cheats to get your foot in the door to meet other high school players, or to feel wanted, desired by other teammates, and recognized by just random people in matchmaking, acknowledged for being good. People just want to be loved at the end of the day, so I hope that if you're cheating out there, you realize that you will still find a discourse community even if you're not good at a game. In fact, being bad at a game sort of has some charm to it if you go about it with the right attitude. So, yeah, you don't have to cheat. I hate to break it to you. So let's look at stats from my last trials weekend. You can look these up if you really want to, but just like trust that I fudged the numbers just for sake of the example here. Legit, I won 90% of my 3 stack trials matches last week while playing on my inferior controller skill because I suck at controller. That number goes up if I switch to mouse and keyboard. Some good players look at 90% and wonder if they could bump it up to 99% or 100. All it would take for me is a simple wall hack injection, and I'd bet my life savings that it would be enough to beat 99% of legit teams and 95% of all teams. Thoughts like this is what can lead a player to be a justice cheater, where they think they deserve to win against other suspect players since they're likely doing it too. So these are the reasons why XimCronus is so widespread. Number one, and this is the biggest one. Years ago, and maybe even now, you could just walk into GameStop and buy this. And that is just top of mind to everybody. They just think it's like anything, like buying a code book back in the day to cheat in a single player game. It's not the same thing. Number two, you're allowed because of the idea of accessibility in gaming, because no game developer wants to tell someone they're not allowed to play their game because they're impaired. It's not a good look. Number three, play to win gamers doing what they think is the most competitive modification to win. Remember the pizza box controller? You gotta respect it. And in the same regard, if they're not banning XimCronus like at all and the developer hasn't even acknowledged it, well then you're not playing to win if you're not making scripts for the game. I hate to say it, but there is some truth to that, although I won't personally do that. Number four, justice cheaters wanting aim assist on mouse and keyboard. They're mad that they put time into getting good, not perfect with MNK, and they want to feel the power of controller, so they're willing to Zim to get it. Number five, it's no risk and a very high safety verification rate, meaning you've heard of other people who XimCronus and don't get banned, and you know for sure that if you go buy the software and download the scripts, that it's very likely you're not going to get a virus on your computer or something like that. Number six, lack of theater mode and kill cam. This can be potential embarrassment to the trained eye if they can see someone is obviously cheating from their first person point of view. That's a reason why a lot of them don't stream or don't record content, because the cheating is that obvious even to normal players. And some do still stream, by the way. There's ways to mask it on OBS and other recording software. Number seven, lack of specific controller settings in games by developers. That's a really big one. You start looking to things like Cronus and Zim to solve problems of what the game cannot solve because for some reason or another the game feels terrible to play. Number eight, the ban policy is unspecific, slow, and there's only mild punishment. This is a huge reason why the botting problem was so bad in RuneScape. Aztecross used that example too. Number 9. Monetary incentive to recov accounts, garner a stream following, or in the case of the company, to have cheaters buy extra copies of a game. That's also huge for the RuneScape botting problem. Accessibility. This is the elephant in the room, and do not misconstrue my words. I want everybody in the world to enjoy gaming. I said it. The Xbox Adaptive Controller allows controller attachments that include Wii-style nunchucks, foot pedals, even a quadriplegic joystick mod. There's other things like that. And it takes custom software and a lot of ingenuity to make these realistically function. You can buy it, you can plug in a lot of stuff, but that's not a promise that it's going to work. It takes a lot of tinkering. So hats off to anybody who finds a perfect setup, perfect config for whatever unlucky circumstances they encounter in life. But you can combine it with eye trackers, gyro aim, and other clever technology to get that result. And chances are the game devs are just going to let it slide, as they should, because it is a serious issue. But this is the elephant in the room. How the heck is anti-cheat supposed to differentiate real accessibility from cheating? For example, an accessibility need may be to turbo press buttons repeatedly to complete an action in the game. Who's to say that same macro can't be used to hit perfect bunny hops? Is there a skill threshold that an impaired player needs to hit before scripts and custom software are no longer okay? Is it a 1.5 kill death ratio? As soon as they hit 2, it's like, I'm sorry if you're impaired, but you need to cut that shit out now. What about an already skilled player? What if they trip and fall down the stairs and break an arm? What if the new addition of scripts make up and exceed their newfound lack of mobility? Do you see how tricky this subject can become? This is Bunchie's stance on third-party peripherals entering their villain arc from the This Week in Destiny article on April 13th, 2023. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I am going to highlight some specific verbiage in these 3 bullet points. So it says programmable controllers are not allowed, and they don't elaborate with what that means. They say they want to experience the game the designers intended, which means that you shouldn't gain an advantage meant for the purpose of achieving victory. Spare me for not reading this whole thing. Pause the video and read it right now. Okay, moving on. What is a programmable controller? Does this include controllers with customization software like the Elite controller where you can change the stick sensitivity and the response curves? Is that what that means? Does this include controllers that can run automation scripts but choose not to? Think about every keyboard manufacturer these days. Go into your keyboard settings right now. I'm sure that you will see a button called macro. And you can just use that in the game. You could use that in Destiny 2 right now, and I will bet you money that you will not get banned for it. Does this also imply that Steam input is disallowed? Is it only okay to modify if you're playing on PC? To modify controller if you're playing on PC? What about REWAS? What about DS4 Windows? I want you to look at what Steam input allows. You can just search this up, by the way. It's easily findable. You can have no recoil, more aim assist, automatic looting, automatic building, and it's just there. Easily searchable. And you can use it in the game, too. I'm sure anti-cheat will flag it, but in Destiny 2, are you kidding me? I don't think it would. I've lost all faith in that. That's super sad to say. Back to the article. What does gaining an advantage mean? It's number 3. So I'm nitpicking here just to demonstrate how tricky the subject is. So as long as the player isn't winning, that's okay. Well, then what if they leave the match right before winning? What if they ignore public matchmaking altogether and only host private lobbies? What if the mods or scripts that they use make them play worse than their normal setup? What if they're already the rank number 1 player before using scripts for fun? Is it okay then to run mild USB devices like a Brook adapter? Is the line only drawn at recoil, aim assist, and crouch macros? What about gaining the advantage of not having to manually delete 3,804 Dawning Essence to prevent repetitive stress injury? What about breaking the world record of no sleep while you shoot Thrall in the Shattered Throne dungeon to farm light level? I know I'm poking the bear on this one, but everyone is definitely a little guilty of some of these, of skirting the line just a little bit and going into the gray area. And we go all the way back to the top here. It is a spectrum that depends on context. I know when I was playing Phantasy Star Online 2 every day, that they had a macro policy that as long as it wasn't affecting in-game combat and that sort of thing, I'm paraphrasing here, it was perfectly okay. So if you really just wanted to delete 3,804 Dawning Essences in your inventory, you absolutely could. An unenforceable policy. So this is an article from Eurogamer. It says, fire teammates of Destiny 2 cheaters may be banned, says Bunchie, even if they didn't cheat themselves. So what this is saying is that if you have a friend who cheats and you play with them, you're going to get banned. This is really dumb. It's honestly unenforceable, unless you have some extra information that isn't obviously available. And this is why I say this. How the heck would you know 100% that you're playing with a cheater? Like I mentioned earlier, I could inject wall hacks and my teammates would be none the wiser, let alone if I was running scripts that automate something I can physically perform consistently regardless, like recoil control on my favorite guns. The only way that my teammates could deduce I was cheating is if I started flying through walls with infinite power ammo. So again, how would Bungie enforce this policy? If your cheater friend gets banned, and you don't because this policy is not enforceable, all you would do is just tell your cheater friend to hop on a new account, and then you'd feign ignorance again. You'd say, I'm a good player. They're obviously also a good player. How the hell was I supposed to know that they were cheating? It's a very, very valid, a fake ignorant comment. This brings me to something I've been searching for a very long time. The dead zones in Destiny are terrible. They're like 20%. So you have to tension the stick 20% until it finally registers that you're moving in the game, and it feels like you're walking through mud to aim in Destiny 2. It feels terrible, especially if you put the time into mouse and keyboard. Switching to a controller feels terrible. So sometimes in science, we ask if we could, but not if we should. This was one of those moments for me. You can see I canceled an order on Amazon. I ordered something, I was excited about it. I watched multiple reviews where a content creator had the same product and was excited to finally have a good feeling controller. But then I started reading the comment section, and it was littered with gamers asking how to add a no recoil script to the settings. That was my red flag to abandon ship and cancel the order. If normal gamers' first thought is to use something as a cheating device, then I sure as hell should not be promoting it. Even in the Cronus Zen videos, the comment section was vile to the creator. But if you look at their Amazon link data that they publicly show, then it suggests otherwise. Those probably same people who write those mean comments end up buying the USB device. It just blows my mind. So now, even if I buy a product that fixes the dead zone problem, even if I'm upfront and show no advantageous scripts, it still may open the floodgates to others doing it instead, so I'm not reviewing that particular controller. All I really want at the end of the day is better native settings to games that I love to play. These are the controller settings in Destiny 2, and compared to Destiny 1, this is so much better. But compared to Call of Duty, where you can change the exact dead zone settings, have aim response curve types in the game, different styles of aim assist, different multipliers on everything you can think of, gun specific, whatever. Compared to Destiny 2, Destiny 2 doesn't have anything. Speaking of, Destiny has been out for a decade. Could we please have better controller settings? It seems like the band-aid fix that Bungie likes to do to make controller feel better is to just power creep juice the aim assist of in-game weapons. They're like, look, this gun has more stability and more aim assist, so it feels better. Now you can keep up with mouse and keyboard. But that's not really fixing the problem at the end of the day. What if instead there were less aim assist, but more specific settings so that we could intentionally aim better than our opponent? If I had to describe the game state right now on controller, like let's say you're cracked at M&K and switch to controller, it feels like you and your opponent are playing underwater with aimbots. Only script users are the ones allowed to bypass the terrible controller support, and sometimes they even also cheat with anti-recoil. It's just so unfair. Let's also drop the ban hammer more frequently. Be specific, fast, and ruthless with the cheating policy when it specifically comes to top 0.1% PvP lobbies, because it's a numbers game. You have much less cheaters to deal with up there than you do in the general population, where, let's be honest, with both skill-based matchmaking and engagement-based matchmaking, a normal player is not going to notice a normal cheater if that normal cheater happens to suck, or if it's just a genuine accessibility user. The gray area starts to exist where real accessibility users are also simultaneously a top player, which isn't a stretch, that is realistic. So it might be something unsolvable, but I still bring it up for community discourse. At the end of the day, it's just tiring. Always have to wonder what I need to do to improve, when the reality is, my cheating opponent might have just created an impossible problem for me to solve. At this point, Fighting Lion is the best anti-cheat in the game we've ever had, and probably will ever have. And that's terrible, to be honest. But at least we got fighting games to grind instead. I want to leave you all on a question. And this goes all the way back to that question I had about Steam input, modifications, reWAS, DS4 Windows. This is for console specifically. If you play on console and you use a controller and you don't use any of this other garbage that I showed in this video, anything that gets around to this orange level, you don't use that on console, I want to know what your config is. What controller, what software do you use to make controller feel good on Destiny on console? What do you use? Because I want some real suggestions. I get a lot of fake suggestions where people clearly use like reWAS or something like that, and I just don't know what's true anymore because I'm not going to use these two, and it's not going to be a one-to-one comparison. I cannot just plug and play. So let me know what you're using on console, because it will help me be a better reviewer in the future. Also, if Bungie's watching, we need those settings. We really, really need those settings. It would make the game so much better. PvP is already the replayable aspect of these games, and making you be able to make more intentional plays is a good thing. And cheaters are going to cheat anyway, so you might as well make it feel better for legit players to play the game. Doesn't matter if cheaters feel slightly better, they're already cheating. Anyway, friends, I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being respectful in the comments section. And thanks for Astacross for making me want to finish this video. You're the best.